Hey friends, Chris DeLeon here from Home Team Game Dev, and I want to start off with another use case for the self-command material, which again in general is about how to get yourself to do things in the broadest sense. More information about that's at self-command.com, which a ton of people have been picking up lately, I assume because of the inclusion of Self-Calm with it, the audiobook based on meditations. But oftentimes the main thing we talk about for this is that when there's a big thing you're trying to get yourself to do, you're trying to get yourself to sit down for a good solid hour or two, chipping away at the next thing you want to do for a project commit on GitHub for a game you're working on. You want to make a video for YouTube. That's what I've got on my board right now. You want to be working on getting a podcast set up, let alone editing an episode in the future. Oftentimes we focus on these longer term targets or these steps towards a longer term target. And a use case I want to highlight today, because it's the thing that's really useful for me, and I still do this as well, is that quite often there's a different category of things that are hard to get ourselves to do, not because it takes a long time, but because we get just kind of wound up or bound up about finding out the information we're going to see in it, right? Maybe we have like an acceptance letter and we're not sure we want to peek at it because we don't want to get the bad news. We might have lab results back from the doctor. We might have, for that matter, some other side of that, making a quick phone call to set up an appointment where we're concerned, but we kind of would rather put it off than find out. Text messages that I've just got a pile of notifications I look at, whatever. But it doesn't have to be a long-term thing. It doesn't have to be a big chunk of a thing. I mean, obviously you don't have to put it every time you stand up. But if it's a thing where you're having a hard time getting yourself to do it, another way to do this is if, let's say, I've got my letter, my envelope on my desk, I want to tear open, and I just give myself a few minutes to do it. I'm not giving myself a minute because I'm not doing it instantaneously. I might know that I need a little bit of a moment to psych myself up, being kind of fair and reasonable. Also not giving myself until like 9 p.m., and whenever we put things on the board, of course, we always put it first person, past tense, with a specific time target for the, not how many minutes, but the time on the clock it'll say when I'm done with it. But if it's 8 p.m. and I want to open up that letter by then, I say, I've opened and read the letter by 8:05 p.m. And because I've conditioned myself through the same kind of stuff we talk about in the full audiobook, about pretty reliably, the things I put on the board, I've intended to do that. I've convinced myself that's what I'm going to do. I've made a good habit of doing what I put on there. I'm realistic about what I put on. There's nothing stopping me from doing that, right? I'm not like saying I slam dunked a basketball, which I'm physically incapable of doing. All I said is I opened this thing up and I read it. And the very fact that I've made a good habit of doing the things that I put down, by 8:05, it's done. I've looked at it. I have the information. And there's a brief spot in Self-Command, the full audiobook, that talks a bit about the importance of, basically, we should always want more information, even if it's information we don't like. And this is the thing I think contributes to that effect of wanting to put off opening those acceptance letters, to want to put off responding to those texts. That makes us want to put off sending the important email, where we just feel like, until I look at it, it could be either way. The necessary way to look at these things, to not get held up on them, because those blockers will last forever, is to say, well, even if it's bad news, I'd rather know. I'd rather have that information in my tool set to pivot on, to rethink, so this came up the other day. I was in a networking event with some other game development folks. One of our guys in our chat's a scout for a game publishing company, and he was talking about how many rejections he has to send out even on a good day. Because a lot of people apply to the game publishing companies to get funding for their projects, and most of them have to get rejected. And what I was, I have to do some rejections as well, a little bit occasionally, for some of the people who apply to Home Team's process and things. And, obviously at a high level, if you don't reject anybody, then you can't also accept anybody. Those two things go hand in hand. So you got to see it as part of a bigger picture. That rejection can be a constructive part of someone's path. That it can be where they realize I'm not where I need to be yet, or I didn't take this seriously enough, or, okay, well, let me kind of reflect on that. Or maybe nothing wrong with it. They got to point in a different direction. That was the wrong fit. This would be the right thing for a different publisher, for them in a different training program or something. But none of that can start until they receive that information. And so we want to be able to get over that roadblock of, well, until I find out, we get this kind of quantum state, this Schrodinger fact that's neither true or false. It's one or the other. And when we give it to ourselves sooner rather than later, even if it's a little 5-minute task to do a 30-second task, a 5-minute goal to knock out that 30-second task, releases us from what's really hovering over us is the uncertainty. That uncertainty is a big part of the problem. And once we have the information, even if the information is not what we wanted the outcome to be, we now have clarity to be able to move forward, to do something with that. And taken to a consistent habit, what a difference this makes to not be wallowing in consistently pushing off or pushing back uncertainty. And there's another thing I'll throw in here, just one more little bit. Basically, if the reason why you're putting something off either won't change or could only get worse, those are some good signs that that's a task to go ahead and knock out. Again, especially when it's these really short things. I need to open this up, need to look at this, whatever. Easy example of this, right? We have a cat. Our cat does not like the vacuum cleaner. And every now and then, because we love our cat and she's super soft and she's super great, we know as the days rolled around of the week where it's time to vacuum, but we'll put it off kind of because at the moment we're like, well, I don't want to upset the cat. I don't want to make the cat, have to run around, feel scared of the vacuum. It's loud, doesn't like it. The cat's not going anywhere. There will never be a moment when this cat is not within sound shot. We have a small apartment in Los Angeles. It's always going to hear this vacuum cleaner once a week. That's going to be the experience. And so if you put something off because of a fact that's not going to change, it doesn't make any sense. Putting off looking at the letter, putting off looking at the acceptance, putting off looking at the text, putting off sending the message that I might be worried about getting the rejection to, putting off setting the appointment that I may not be happy about the results I hear back. Don't change those facts. Or in those cases, in some of those cases, the result may get worse. Right? This is the case all the time if there's things that are, people sometimes have ailments that need to be checked out, concerns they've got. Putting off finding out could cause it to progress worse. There are so many things where if it's caught earlier, if it's figured out sooner, if it's diagnosed earlier, they can do more about it. And again, either way, this comes back to this point of whatever the case is, we'd rather know. More information is better, even if it's information we'd rather not have. Helps us do those small tasks that we put up, get hung up on, and that's where we can use our board, not just for bigger tasks, not just for stepping a longer arc, not just for keeping our attention on a single task. And again, for all the same reasons we talk about of how it externalizes our intention. So it's clear to myself that's what I meant to do. That until I do that, I haven't cleared my space to put my next thing that I intend to do. I can't fool myself for as time slides, if it's suddenly 9 p.m. and I look at it and say I did by 8:05, I can't pretend like, well, I'll get to it. I know that's something I gotta tweak how I'm going about it because that's not working. I've visualized, I've made clearer externally, like a troubleshooting what's wrong with my process. And it separates that need to try to guide our action from doing the action itself, which sometimes the reason for that need for the action isn't physical exertion. It isn't that we're in over our heads in terms of our skills. It isn't that we need to reach out for help. It literally just comes down to the emotional energy of getting hit with potentially tricky information. And if we can take having to be our own manager and our own employee and separate those apart, putting manager on the board beforehand, playing employee after the fact, following those instructions, well, I got to check this out for my boss who just wrote that down a minute ago. I'll relay the information. That little bit of separation, as absurd and silly as it sounds, it helps. It frees up a little bit more of your mental RAM to tend to the task at hand. That's it for the day. As always, self-command.com, the full audiobook with all information if you're curious to check it out. If you haven't reviewed it and you do have it, that does help me out. It only takes a minute. You don't even have to write anything. It's just like how many stars. A lot of people wind up checking out and not reviewing it because once they've downloaded it, there's no reason to really go back to the Gumroad profile that they used to download it from. But if you're up for doing that, it helps me out. And as always, too, on there, if cost is a barrier, if you read about it, there's a deal in there to help people out for a couple of hours, do some good in the world, and get it for free if that's what you got to do. So self-command.com. Thanks for being here. I'll keep my rotation going. Bye for now.